So I ask you, my fellow Americans, what the hell has happened to the Republican Party? It is now a house divided against itself, literally and figuratively, unable to reach across the aisle, blocking the nomination of a Supreme Court justice, fighting amongst each other, and threatening to shut the government down again and again and again. Hijacked, first by the Tea Party and then by a demagogue who is now the party's standard bearer. Where is the party of Lincoln when we need one in these United States of America? Thank you, Al Gore. Leslie Gore. Abraham Lincoln. What am I thinking? No, it wasn't always this way. In this presidential election season, it is time to reflect on the partially progressive Republican presidents who put this current crop of discompassionate conservatives to shame, ghosts of the grand old party past. If elephants never forget, then let's never forget these elephants. In these divisive times, we might do well to listen again to the words of Abraham Lincoln, oft cited but rarely heeded, as delivered in his second inaugural address on March 4th, 1865, as the Civil War was winding down and just over a month before he was assassinated.
With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Now here's a Lincoln soundbite you may never have heard from his first annual message to Congress, December 2nd, 1861.
Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration.
That's not Lincoln. That's Karl Marx. Be honest, Abe.
Karl who?
After the show, Abe and I are going to have a talk about why tall men feel compelled to wear top hats. And now, ladies and gentlemen, speaking softly and carrying a big stick, Teddy Roosevelt.
Bully, that's Theodore. I hate Teddy. And about that speaking softly, I tried, but nobody could hear me.
We're all worried about global warming in the 21st century. Any wise words from a bull moose who roamed all over the earth in the 19th and 20th century?
Defenders of the short-sighted men who in their greed and selfishness will, if permitted, rob our country of half its charm by their reckless extermination of all useful and beautiful wild things, sometimes seek to champion them by saying the game belongs to the people. So it does. And not merely to the people now alive, but to the unborn people. The greatest good for the greatest number applies to the number within the womb of time, compared to which those now alive form but an insignificant fraction. Our duty to the whole, including the unborn generations, bids us restrain an unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations. The movement for the conservation of wildlife and the larger movement for the conservation of all our natural resources are essentially democratic in spirit, purpose, and method.
Mr. President, you made a name for yourself as a trust buster. Is there anything you can say about the role of large corporations and government in a post-Citizens United republic.
There is a widespread conviction in the minds of the American people that the great corporations known as trusts are in certain of their features and tendencies hurtful to the general welfare. This springs from no spirit of envy or uncharitableness, nor lack of pride in the great industrial achievements that have placed this country at the head of the nation struggling for commercial supremacy. It is based upon sincere conviction that combination and concentration should be not prohibited, but supervised and within reasonable limits controlled. And in my judgment, this conviction is right. It is no limitation upon property rights or freedom of contract to require that when men receive from government the privilege of doing business under corporate form, which frees them from individual responsibility and enables them to call into their enterprises the capital of the public, they shall do so upon absolutely truthful representations as to the value of their property in which the capital is to be invested. Corporations engaged in interstate commerce should be regulated if they are found to exercise a license working to the public injury. It should be as much the aim of those who seek for social betterment to rid the business world of crimes of cunning as to rid the entire body politic of crimes of violence. Great corporations exist because they are created and safeguarded by our institutions, and it is therefore our right and our duty to see that they work in harmony with these institutions.
So Republicans can be democratic defenders of the republic, not an oligarchy in Republican clothing. Imagine that. Thank you, Mr. President. And now you are also known as a warrior, a bully, and an imperialist. But few people may know that you won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating an end to the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. What did you have to say in your Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech?
After much thought, I have concluded that the best and most fitting way to apply the amount of the prize is by using it as a foundation to establish at Washington a permanent industrial peace committee. The object will be to strive for better and more equitable relations among my countrymen who are engaged, whether as capitalists or as wage workers, in industrial and agricultural pursuits. This will carry out the purpose of the founder of the prize, for in modern life it is as important to work for the cause of just and righteous peace in the industrial world as in the world of nations.
Like the dreams of many dreamers, this Industrial Peace Committee was not born for some time until President Roosevelt's fifth cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, established the National Labor Relations Board in 1934. And now General and President Dwight D. Eisenhower, from his farewell address, January 17th, 1961.
In the Council of Governments, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic process. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
And on other occasions,
I like to believe that people, in the long run, are going to do more to promote peace than our governments. Indeed, I think the people want peace so much that one of these days governments had better get out of the way and let them have it. Though force can protect in an emergency, only justice, fairness, consideration, and cooperation can finally lead men to the dawn of eternal peace. Every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all, in any true sense. Under the cloud of threatening war, it is humanity hanging from a cross of iron.
Wow, I like Ike. Repeat after me. I like Ike. I like Ike. I like Ike. And that's true even if I love Adlai Stevenson. Earlier in this presidential campaign season, Donald J. Trump took a breather from telling us how he would make America great again by making fun of a reporter with a disability. In doing so, he distinguished himself from one of our partially progressive Republican presidents, George H.W. Bush, who said this as he signed the Americans for Disability Act into law.
3 weeks ago, we celebrated our nation's Independence Day. Today, we're here to rejoice and celebrate another Independence Day, one that is long overdue. With today's signing of the landmark Americans for Disabilities Act, every man, woman, and child with a disability can now pass through the once closed doors into a bright new era of equality, independence, and freedom. This historic act is the world's first comprehensive declaration of equality for people with disabilities. The first. Its passage has made the United States the international leader on this human rights issue. Our success with this act proves that we are keeping faith with the spirit of our courageous forefathers, who wrote in the Declaration of Independence, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights." These words have been our guide for more than 2 centuries as we've labored to form our more perfect union. But tragically, for too many Americans, the blessings of liberty have been limited or even denied. Together, we must remove the physical barriers we've created and the social barriers that we have accepted. For ours will never be a truly prosperous nation until all within it prosper. This act does something important for American business. And remember this, you've called for new sources of workers. Well, many of our fellow citizens with disabilities are unemployed. They want to work, and they can work. And remember, this is a tremendous pool of people who will bring to jobs diversity, loyalty, proven low turnover rate, and only one request, the chance to prove themselves. And when you add together federal, state, local, and private funds, it costs almost $200 billion annually to support Americans with disabilities, in effect, to keep them dependent. Well, when given the opportunity to be independent, they will move proudly into the economic mainstream of American life. And that's what this legislation is all about. Our problems are large, but our unified heart is larger. Our challenges are great, but our will is greater. And in America, the most generous, optimistic nation on the face of the earth, we must not and will not rest until every man and woman who, with a dream, has the means to achieve it. And now, on behalf of our entire country, I lift my pen to sign this Americans with Disabilities Act and say, let the shameful wall of exclusion finally come tumbling down. God bless you all.
Shame on
Shame
you,
on
Tea
you, Tea
Party.
Party.
Shame on you,
Shame
Donald
on
J.
you.
Trump.
You give us Republicans a bad name.
Bad name.
Why don't you have a cup of herbal tea?
And tax the rich instead.
And tax the rich instead.